Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of SageMaker Fridays. So my name is Ozan. I'm a senior product manager at AWS. I have been working on machine learning governance in SageMaker and building new products and capabilities in this field and in this space. So last week, I had a 15-minute video where I explained what ML governance and the challenges in this space are. And also, I introduced you our three new purpose-built tools we just launched at reInvent a couple months ago. And as promised today, we will have a demo for those three new purpose-built products, and we will answer your questions. Today, my colleague Ram Vital will run the demo. Hey Ram, would you like to introduce yourself before we start?
Yes. Hello, Zan. Hello, everyone. My name is Ram
Hi.
Vital. I'm a principal machine learning solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. I help customers onboard and scale machine learning workloads with Amazon SageMaker platform. And I've been involved in the SageMaker ML governance for quite some time, helping bring in new features to the market. And I'm here to help to demo some of the new features we have launched.
Thank you. Thank you, Ram. So why don't we start for demo for the first product, Ram? Do you have any questions before we start, Ram?
Yeah, I was thinking, how about we do a role play today so that it becomes easier to talk about some of the features. So maybe I can be the customer now, and you could be the product manager as you help release the new features. And we can start the dialogue that way to share these new features in this session.
Actually, it's a great idea, Ram.
Awesome. Okay. So I know you during reInvent, you've launched a few machine learning governance tools. I'm wondering, what is actually ML governance? Can you explain that?
Sure. For us, ML governance ensures the responsible use of machine learning for business purposes by empowering business stakeholders, surfacing important information, and providing appropriate controls. So governance is required actually when a company is heavily dependent on machine learning for their business outcomes or is subject to high regulations, such as in industry, finance, and healthcare. And in both cases, more than speed, it's the compliance posture, soundness of theory, and business impacts of the model that need to be validated and continuously monitored. So that's why we need machine learning governance to set up and enforce preventive and detective guardrails at any stage of our machine learning lifecycle to ensure that our machine learning systems are secure, compliant, and auditable, and also our machine learning processes are efficient and reliable.
Okay, that's great. So can you give us a brief overview of machine learning governance tool you launched during this reInvent?
Yes, sure. Very briefly, Ram. So we will have a demo already, but very briefly, we launched three products. The first product was on the permission setup, basically onboarding users to SageMaker fast in a secure fashion, and we call it Role Manager. Second feature is model cards. It's basically targeting to create a single source of truth for your model information. And the third feature is model dashboard. It's basically showing you a unified view of your model, performance history of your model, and gives you alert if there is any violation and any problem with your model's performance.
Okay, so should we? How do we inform customers about these new features? Should we do a demo now, or what's your thoughts on that?
I think you had a great idea, Ram. So we can do a role play. We can have a demo for each one. So let's say I'm a data scientist and working on a mobile operator company, and I want to build and run a model to calculate the customer churn. And you are the main administrator, let's say, Ram, because we are going to have, let's have the demo for first product. Let's say you are the main administrator. I'm come to you and ask you to create the right permission set for me so that I can come to SageMaker console and run Studio and build my model. So how do we do that, Ram, today with the newly launched product?
Sure. Yeah, I will be the ML admin, like you mentioned, Ozan, and demonstrate how the role manager can help onboard users, such as data scientists and machine learning engineers, to SageMaker platform to help build the customer churn model for the use case you talked about. So the first thing the ML admin would do is use the console to get into SageMaker console. As you can see on the screen right now, I'm on SageMaker console. And you can, if you click on getting started, and that's where you would see That's where you see the create role, and that's how you would create the role for a persona, right? Such as data scientist.
Yes.
But before you create a role, you need to have a SageMaker domain, right? So
Yes.
you want to have a domain to. Domain is basically a construct we have in SageMaker to host all the machine learning resources that you need to build machine learning models, right? So,
Yes.
that's the construct we have. Sorry, go ahead to your
And
question.
yeah, Ram, I was asking, so you showed us, okay, there is one way is on getting started. Is there another way right now on the console to use Role Manager?
Yeah, there is another way. When you create a user, when you onboard a user, you create a user profile, and then you can specify the role. I will show you that in a minute when I
Okay.
get to that screen.
Okay.
So right now, let me talk a little bit about the domain, because that's the foundational construct customers need to understand. So it's like I said earlier, it's a container to host all the machine learning resources. And here you can go ahead and create domain. I've already created a couple of domains, as you can see. So you could create domains based on your line of business or your teams or projects, however you want to configure that. So here I've created a domain for customer churn, the use case that we're going to be demonstrating today, right? So, and then you create a domain, and in the domain you specify constructs such as if you want to run your domain within the VPC boundary, you specify the VPC boundary and run it there. And then that's where you would have user profiles too. So the user profiles are attached to the persona. Or actually the physical user, the data scientist, let's say data scientist Alice is going to be building the model, then you have to set up a user profile for Alice. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. I'm called a demo user. So we could actually create a user for Alice to onboard Alice as a data scientist. So the way you do that is right here. You just specify the username. And then the second way is the one I was talking about earlier is this. You create a role using the role creation wizard, and that's how you create the role for that particular data scientist persona. All right, so let's go ahead and do that, and then I can walk you through the wizard of creating the role using the role manager. Is that what you're looking for, Ozan?
Yes, definitely, Ram. It sounds good. And one question on this, Ram. So you are going to create a user profile first. Actually, you will come here and you will create a role using Role Manager, and then you add this role to the user profile, right?
Exactly. That's the workflow. You would have to first create the role, and then you come back and finish so here I started creating the user profile, but if you see here, it's asking for an execution role. So on the execution role, you have two options. When you created the domain, you specify a domain execution role. By default, it will assume that if you don't specify a user profile level execution role. So what we are going to be doing is assume the data scientist needs different set of permissions, right, compared to the domain level permissions. So you can scope it down using this particular user profile level execution role.
Yes.
So that's what I'll be doing next. So let me go ahead and create that role using this wizard. Okay. As a best practice, you should also specify a tag. So if you're federating this user from an IDP like Okta, so the way you can ensure this user, that particular Alice user coming in from an IDP like Okta is opening their studio instance, is to specify this tag. And then you can say it's a user ID is Alice. That way you can match against that particular user ID, which can flow in as a principal tag or a session tag from the federation IDP into this console. So that's what I've just done. And then I'll go ahead and click next. So here you can see I am actually I don't want to go ahead and create the user profile. I want to create the role, right? So let's finish that first, and then I'll come back to this screen. So let's go ahead and click create user role, user role for the user profile. So this is the first step in your role wizard, role manager wizard, right? So you have to specify what type of role persona you're creating, give it a name suffix basically. So I'm going to say I'm creating a data scientist because Alice is a data scientist, right? So data scientist, and then you could specify a description for that role. This is for data scientist execution role, something like that, and then you can select a persona. Here it's going to be data scientist, so I'm going to be selecting data scientist.
So I'm seeing different type of user persona types, Ram. So who are these persona types, and why does it matter, and what's important?
Yeah, the persona type is basically when you're working on a machine learning project, there are multiple personas involved, right? So you have data scientists building the model, you have machine learning engineers who's doing the machine learning operations persona, right? So you have that, and then you could also have no human involved in your machine learning deployments, like you're running a training in an environment where no human is involved. So you need some kind of a compute role for that. And then also you may have some custom requirements which doesn't fall under these categories. So you could also completely customize your role settings using the custom role settings.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, thank you, Ram.
So I select data scientist because I'm onboarding Alice as a data scientist, and then I could click next. Yeah, but there are other options too we can select, like setting on VPC network and encryption conditions.
What are those conditions, Ram, and why is it important again?
Yeah, so for VPC, assume you are building a secure machine learning workload, right? So you don't want that traffic to traverse internet. You want it to be within the VPC boundary, and the data needs to flow via private link to the backend SageMaker service APIs. Then you can use VPC option with the private subnets, right? So you are not putting anything on public subnets, so therefore nobody can get access to your data for your workload. So it makes it more secure. VC customers, regulated industries, and healthcare customers use this option because they want it to be highly secure, not be prone to any kind of an attack from external threat vectors. So that's kind of here you can select. The best practice is to select multiple subnets across different availability zones. So you're increasing the availability of your workload. And then also specify a security group for that particular VPC to further protect it's a firewall, right? So you're protecting your traffic using the firewall. So, and then you can also specify encryption conditions. By default, we encrypt everything, but you can also choose to have your own customer master key, so that way you have better control over encryptions. So that's kind of what it is. So here you can specify your own customer master key. And also that is for the data that you put it on S3. And then if you will have EBS volumes as you're building machine learning workloads using SageMaker. So you can also specify a customer master key for that as well. We also provide an option to create a KMS key. If you need to create one, we provide a quick link from here. You can jump off to KMS and create a key. So let me click next. I've provided the basic information for that role. Now I want to specify, but you can see here in this case, here I'm going to be configuring ML activities for that persona.
So what are these ML activities, Ram?
Yeah, so you see there are 6 activities selected for data scientists. Maybe we can click on a few there. So for a data scientist persona, you will need that persona to be able to run applications on Studio. So that's the run Studio applications, right? For building the model. And then once they have built the model, they want to run, as part of building the model, they may have to run ML jobs, like training jobs, right? So and you need to provide permissions for that, and that's manage ML jobs. And then also manage models. So once they created the model, they have to register it, deploy it, right? So how do they manage those models? So you need to provide permissions for that. And as part of building the model, you are running the data scientist, Alice, is running experiments, right? So you need to give them permissions to create experiments and trials, and then search and visualize those trials. And then they also need an S3 bucket access because as part of building model, you need data, right? So you have a couple of options. As a best practice, we recommend you specify a particular bucket, only bucket level access for that particular set of users, persona. So you can narrow down their S3 access at a bucket level. Yeah. So that's what we provide as a default selection.
Yep. Ram, I think this part is making our ML admins' jobs much simpler, right? So they don't need to worry about, hey, what do data scientist team need or versus what MLOps team need. It looks like role managers basically providing the most popular ML activities for each persona type.
Exactly. I mean, this is based on customer feedback, right? This product was designed based on customer feedback, where they had spent going through several different blogs and documentation to figure out what the policy needs to be for each of those API actions and resources. So now we have provided this simple wizard-driven activity where they can select it. We default selected from the persona. They can also customize it. So to make their user journey, the admin journey, much more easier, right, and simpler.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. As part of this selection, you also see a couple other things that ML admin will have to fill out. So when you selected this manage ML jobs, it also added this pass roles, right, option. So this is something customers have to, the ML admin would have to specify. The reason is when you're running a training job, it runs in a different infrastructure, right? It's not in the notebook environment. So you want to specify permissions for that job that's running in a remote cluster and accessing S3 and other services like CloudWatch and CloudWatch logs. So you want to specify permissions for that as well. And that's what this is. So here you have to specify a particular role. So let me see if I can do this. So I'm going to go get I already pre-created a role. So I'm going to go ahead and get that role to specify the pass role on that I need to put in there as part of the permissions. So let me get that. So you can see here I created a SageMaker pass role. This was created using the same wizard-driven role manager. Instead of selecting data scientist, I selected SageMaker compute role and created this role earlier. So here you can see it's a policy that's fine-grained, providing particular access to scoping down the access to a particular bucket, list bucket, and then EC2 permissions, and then the data key permissions that we are creating, KMS permissions, and some CloudWatch permissions, right? And CloudWatch logs. That's about it. So very, very simple, straightforward, and it creates that for us, for our customers. And then you can take this particular compute role on, and then go back to this, and then specify that on. So we are also looking to improve this experience for our customers in the coming months to make it much more easier for customers to even pass this role. So improving the experience even further based on customer feedback. So we're open to receiving feedback from our customers. That's how we build our products, right? So if there is a better way to do it, always looking for feedback. So and then you can also manage models. You can specify the same pass role, or if you can choose to create a different pass role. It really depends on customers' security requirements, right? How fine-grained do you want to be for that particular set of actions, right? So, and function. So here I'm passing the same role for both managing jobs and managing models. And for the S3 bucket, I could specify that particular bucket that I've already pre-created here and use that, right? So it is basically this bucket. And that's the bucket. So yeah, so that's the bucket the customer wants to give access.
Yes, this ML activity and will give me a permission to get access to that bucket, right? Selected bucket.
Exactly. So this is for the data scientist. So that other pass role is for the compute job that runs behind the scenes.
Yes.
So there are two permissions here, right? So one is for the data scientist that's working on the notebook environment, studio notebook environment. Other one we talked about pass role is for the training job or compute only jobs, right? So,
yes.
All right. So now I'm going to click next, and then here you can see there is more options to customize. Yeah, so you could.
So Ram, my role, the role that I'm going to create, doesn't have to include only the permissions that I have selected in ML activities, right? So I can also add some AWS managed or customer managed policies.
Exactly. So yeah, we have often see our customers do this as well as in the current environment. So they create their own customer managed policies based on their requirements, right? So, and then how do we bring that into this particular role manager? So that's why we came up with the solution of allowing customers to attach policies that they are creating as part of this role manager workflow. So you can, or you can also bring in IAM managed policies as well if you need to, or you can bring in customer managed policies. So let's assume this particular role needs Athena access. So I'm going to attach Athena full access as a demo only. You may want to create a customer managed policies and attach it. Typically, that may be the workflow, right? So, and also you can specify a tag. And here you can specify what is the purpose of this role? How am I going to be using it? Should I narrow down my access based on these tags, which you can do using ABAC, attribute-based access control policies, right? So and here I could potentially say what kind of department this particular role belongs to. We could say it's marketing, right? So, and then use that as a qualifier in your IAM policy conditions. And click next. And then here, finally, you have a chance to review all the information that you've entered. And then if you're satisfied with it, or you can actually choose to edit it as well if you need to make any corrections. And then you can go ahead and click submit to create the role.
So I can go back and make an edit and come back to the last step
Yes,
here.
exactly. Exactly.
But Ram, after you create this one, can I also, so how can I edit the role that I created?
How can you edit the role you
Yes.
created? Right now, it's not driven through this role manager. The edit workflow
Yes.
is from the IAM. So you can actually go to console. I mean, I clicked on go to role there. It is basically an IAM role. What we are creating is an IAM role, but
Okay.
we are providing a wizard-driven approach and scoped policies based on the persona and activities, right? So it's IAM role. Now I'm in an IAM role console. You are free to edit
Yes.
here or using APIs, right? IAM already provides
APIs as
APIs.
well.
You can use that to edit it. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
So Ram, can you show us the role that you created? Is this the role that we could
yeah,
just
this
create?
is the role. You can see here,
Okay.
SageMaker data scientist, right? So that's the role I
Okay.
just created.
Okay.
And yeah, and you can, yeah.
Then Ram, can you show us how I'm going to use this role? How I'm going to add to user profile as a last step?
Yes, of course. So before I get there, I want to quickly show you the permissions it's creating. You can see it created for each activity a nice policy, and those policies are pretty much fine-grained, right? You don't get all the star kind of an option by default. You may end up using it if, or you have to handcraft all those fine-grained policies. So the advantage of using Role Manager is you don't have to do the heavy lifting. The service does it for you. And you can see here, it actually created only fine-grained actions like create application, delete application, and update, and then list applications, right? So it scopes it down to the set of API actions you should do for that particular ML activity. Yeah, so to answer your question, how do I associate this to the role? So you can go back here and then create role. Actually, right here. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and click add user, and then Alice. So you can see here now SageMaker data scientist role popped up, right? That's the one I just created. You see that? Yes. We also prefix SageMaker just to distinguish it's created through this role manager, not from the IAM console, right? So IAM APIs. So just to have that kind of a differentiation here. So you can select that role that we just created, and then you can specify the user ID tagging we spoke about earlier to scope the access down to that user when you're federating in from your identity provider, and then click next, right? And then you can choose all the default options or customize it based on your use case requirements, right? Onboarding requirements. So here I'm going to take all the defaults for now, and then click next, right? Click submit, and that's how you basically onboard the user to SageMaker Studio.
So my user profile is ready. I can come and launch Studio, right? With this permission set you just created via Role Manager.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And then the way you do that is Alice comes in here, launch Studio, right? Just like this, you can do it. Or you can get the pre-signed URL for this user profile and use a create pre-signed URL API to invoke Studio as well. We have customers doing that as well as part of, you can do it from applications like Identity Center or your own custom web application where you can invoke Studio as well.
Yep. Ram, I think it looks very fast, and it looks like it simplifies onboarding process for SageMaker users. I think it's awesome.
Great. Sure.
Yes.
So should we switch gears now, Ozan, and talk about other features?
Yes, Ram, I think it's a great idea. Now, you onboarded me, Ram. I am a data scientist. You onboarded me. So I have the right permission set to do my job in SageMaker. You were the ML administrator. So what you did, you created domain, you created user profile and role via Role Manager. Then you assign this role to the user profile, which Alice will use to launch Studio and build model as a data scientist. So Ram, if you want, let's quickly jump to the demo of our second product, which is Amazon SageMaker model cards.
Yeah, so So should we talk about what a role manager is so that our customers know what it is? Do you want to give
Yeah.
a brief overview about role manager?
So sure, model cards.
Oh, sorry, model cards. Yeah,
Yes.
that is
Yep.
correct. Yeah.
Yep. So model cards actually run basically for documenting model information. So during the model development process, as an ML practitioners, let's say Alice in this case, need to make like various decisions like which algorithm to use, the purpose of the model, training details, algorithm types, model versions, risk ratings, and she also needs to analyze model behavior using different inputs. And she also needs to make some observations, and it's a lot of information, as you know. As she's going through this entire process, she will need to document all this quantitative and qualitative information about the model so that the stakeholders can use this information to review and approve the model for production in the ML workflow. And as we know, we are talking to our customers. So today, we know that many companies use disparate tool and manual tools, emails, Word documents, even internal tools to capture and share this model information. And this is creating a like decentralized mechanism, and this leads to sometimes inconsistent and incomplete model information. And this causes a delay in the model review and approval workflow. So that's why we built Amazon SageMaker model cards, RAM. So this helps our customers to create a single source of truth for model information by centralizing and standardizing the documentation through the model lifecycle. And it will sit on the SageMaker console on the left pane under governance link.
Right. So now, so who is the persona that's going to be entering the model card?
I would say it's mostly data scientist.
Okay. So
Yep.
let's assume I will do a role play here as a data
Yes.
scientist and walk through
Yes.
how to create the model card. Okay. For
Yes.
the use
Makes
case, we
sense.
talked about customer churn use case, right? So we have
Yes.
already given Alice access to the to SageMaker Studio, onboarded them. Assume they've gone ahead and built the customer churn model, or in the process of building the model, right? So the first thing they need to do is, once you've identified the business as a best practice, once you've identified the business problem, you're going to solve the business problem using machine learning. A best practice would be to start creating the model card. It's basically a document about what you're going to do, right? You're going to build a machine learning model, and then there is a journey you go through to build the model, deploy the model, validate the model, and integrate with your production systems. So you want to capture all those machine learning journey steps. That needs to be audited and available for your stakeholders, business stakeholders, and also for your own team, so that they know what this model is doing, right? So that's where model card comes into play. So we provide model card, enable model card accessible through this SageMaker console today under governance, under model cards, right? So click on model cards, and then you can actually create a model card. So here we provide a list of model cards already that exist in the system. Now I'm going to be creating one new model card for the customer churn model we talked about, right? So you can say it's a customer churn model card. I give it a name, and then model status. I'm going to start off with the draft.
Yes.
And
why is draft? Why did you pick draft, Ram?
Yeah, so when you start a model card, there is a life cycle, right? Much like your machine learning model has a life cycle, model card also has a life cycle, because when you're starting a model card, you want to start in a draft status because you don't know all the information ahead of time until you start moving forward with the model development process, right? So you start out with the draft, and then start to enter information. You may have as little as what is the business problem and what's the use case you are solving, what are your assumptions and things like that, but you may not have everything. You may not have a trained model yet, right? So you could start off with that, provide a draft status, and then start to fill in information as you move through your model development journey.
Yep. Yeah,
And
this
then
is super important, Ram. Maybe we need to underline again, we can create a model card without having even a model.
You can create, exactly. You can create a model card without having a model, because you, like I said earlier, you may have just a business problem and you're solving the business problem using machine learning. That's exactly the place you want to start with model card, right? So that you have that information early, and you can move forward with that. So
yes.
And then once you start build the model, you could actually, let's say you built it on SageMaker, then you could come in and say, hey, this is an AWS resource, and then you could specify the actual model that you built, which is customer churn model, which is what I've already pre-built. So you could just click on find model details, And here you can see it actually discovered my model information, right? What is the model artifact, model on, and inference environment? Do you have a question?
Yep. Yeah, I think I have a question. So this is interesting, Ram. So does that mean that I can also create a model card for non-SageMaker models? Does it? It doesn't have to be on the SageMaker, right?
Exactly. We support third-party models, right? So you can actually bring in your own model. We may not be able to discover information like training and inference, right? So you could probably you can actually provide that information using APIs, or you can
Yes.
enter information. So we do provide APIs for model cards, which you can use from your third-party systems and
Okay.
create the model card as well. We support that approach
Okay.
as well.
So if it's third-party models, then I need to provide those models. So, but if it's SageMaker model, then we will auto-populate a
We
lot
will
of
auto
information like
populate. Yeah, exactly. We
training.
can bring in all the metadata about your model
Yes,
because SageMaker
that's great.
platform captures quite a bit of metadata as you're moving through your model lifecycle journey, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, so that's kind of a function we provide here. So now I'm going to enter some of the model description. So what is the purpose of this model, right? So I could say it is an XGBoost model that I'm going to be building for customer churn for the mobile phone customers use case we talked about, right? And you can provide a model version, which is start off with, it can be less than 0. Ideally, you want to start with the model version 1, right? And then move forward from there. As you're iterating through your model and changing information, model code will also maintain versions of that, right? So you may want to capture that for audit purposes. What is changing in my model code after you've created it the first time around? And model description, I've lost that here, so let me put that in.
Yeah.
And then problem type. We talked about customer churn model. It's basically the prediction is going to be yes or no, right? Is the customer going to churn or not, right? So it's a binary classification model. And then algorithm type is logistic regression. All of this you would probably know ahead of time, even you went ahead and built the model, right? So you could provide this upfront.
Yes.
And then even the model description, you could provide it upfront before you've been building the model, and who is going to be creating the model. In this case, the data scientist Alice is creating the model. You could specify that. And then model owner, it could be the team or the department that's building the model, right? So I could potentially say marketing department. And then what kind of business problem is this particular model going to solve? Again, this you should know ahead of time as well. And you can be more concrete here. You could say it's yeah, so it's actually the XGBoost model that I'm building, and
It's pretty much everything about the model, right, Ram? Every details about your model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can be more concrete about your business problem, right? What you're trying to solve, right? So,
yes.
And then the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders involved in solving this business problem? In this case, it's marketing, right? And anybody else that's involved could be specified here. And line of business, it could be for you may want to specify, like if you're doing it for your retail marketing or retail or whatever your line of business is, right?
Yes.
So you're doing marketing for retail, let's say, that could be your line of business. And then intended users, what is the use case for this, right? So where are you planning to use this in a production setting? So you want to specify this use case is used to identify customer segments to offer marketing promotions or something like that, right?
Yep.
So you want to be more concrete in terms of specifying where this is going to be used in a production setting. What is the use case? And what assumptions are you making, right? All that you could specify here.
Yes.
And what are some of the factors affecting your model efficacy? Is it the size of the data set, number of records, right? Or it's the features in your data set? All of that can be specified here. So that's factors affecting model efficacy, right?
Ram, I'm seeing risk rating there. So what is that and how do you assess the risk rating?
Yeah, risk rating is basically based on the customer's use case, right? So is it let's say you're doing credit risk modeling, then it could potentially be a high risk model, right? Again, it's based on the use case, and it's basically specifying what is the if you did predict wrong in a production environment, what is the impact to your business? What is the risk impact to your business, right? Is it a high risk? It could potentially be high risk. It depends on the use case, right? So like I said, in the credit risk, it could be a high risk. You don't want to be predicting wrong credit risk, denying loan applications for your customers, which could have a negative impact to your business and your trust with your customers and things like that, right? So it really depends on what level of use case you're solving with this particular machine learning model. So
Yeah, I think this is another important information for auditors, let's say, Ram, because if it's high risk, then I mean they need to maybe give more
yeah,
attention.
great point. Yeah, so this also applies the control mechanism. What kind of controls you need to apply for your machine
Yes,
learning model is dictated by this risk rating, right? If it is a high risk, probably your auditors and your governance teams may impose more controls on this model, right? It needs to be, for example, if it's a high risk model, the model needs to be evaluated by third party using third
yes,
party data sets, independent reviews, and things like that. There could be more stringent controls based on this risk rating.
yes. So we mentioned a lot about auditors, but as you underlined, Ram, you said governance person. So we can also say risk officers as well, part of this
Yeah,
governance
model
team.
risk officers. We have seen
Yeah.
financial customers is a common use case where they have model risk officers, right?
Yes.
Who come in and evaluate the risk based on the risk of the model, they validate whether the model has gone through a set of controls, right? So they validate all that.
Yes.
Based on the policy they have.
Yes. Makes
So here
sense.
I'm going to say low because it's a customer churn, it's a time-bound promotion, probably not that much of an impact. Again, this is based on the use case and your disposition on that. So it's not, Amazon isn't saying you have to do this particular risk. It's customer-driven, right? Customer and use case-driven.
Yes.
So here it introduces low risk for this particular use case we're talking about. But again, it can change based on your use case. And here objective function is where you specify what are you trying to minimize or maximize based on your metric, right? So it could be a loss metric or accuracy or RMSE and IUC metric and so on. So here I'm going to choose loss. I want to minimize loss for my binary classification model, right? So
Ram,
yeah.
you said something. You said you can change the risk later. So does that mean that, let's say, my risk rating changes over the life cycle of ML? Because let's say I have more sensitive data added to my model running more sensitive data, then that does it mean that I can go back and edit my model card and change the risk rating?
Yeah, if your model does change from a low risk to high risk, yes, you should be able to go back and change the risk rating, but then all the controls probably will change, right? So you need
Yes.
to accommodate that for in your model governance
Yes.
process. You can come back and change it. Yeah.
Okay.
So here I'm going to say, what is the notes on the objective function? You could specify some document some information about why you're choosing that particular objective function. Here I'm saying a high percentage of correct classification of customers is more important than having a few errors to large losses, right? Due to large losses. And any training observations you have as part of this model training, you could specify here. Here I could say that it's trained on a UCI mobile operators data set, which is publicly available, and anything else that you have pertaining to your training that you want to document. So,
Yep. And I'm seeing the training job details. As you said, Ram, this is auto-populated, right?
exactly, yeah. So since this model is trained on SageMaker, it's actually auto-populated. We pull in all the information about training, such as what was the training data set, validation data set, what is the training environment, what kind of container you used, and things like that. Also, we provide metrics, right? So you've trained it, what is the result? So we pull in all the metrics, training metrics, such as validation loss and training loss, as you can see here. And you can also add your own metrics too. So
yes.
Yeah, so that's the information about training. Now, the next step is, like we spoke about, evaluation is another key thing based on the risk. You may have independent evaluations done for your model using third-party or third-party data sets, right? So, and also as part of your model testing process, you will be detecting, you will be running through bias and drift evaluations, right? So So we provide a mechanism for customers to specify those metrics as well. What is your evaluation results, basically, right? So you have a few options. You can use a JSON file in S3 to specify those evaluation results, or you could upload your JSON file or enter manually. So let's take a upload JSON file. I already have a JSON file I've downloaded earlier from my evaluation. So I'm going to be using that to upload here. So let's go ahead and
So what are those 4 types, Rob?
Yeah, cool. So we support 4 different evaluation types. You can using other services, like we have SageMaker Clarify, which helps you detect bias and drift in your machine learning models. So we integrate with this with Clarify to pull that information. Also, we have Model Monitor, right? So which allows you to monitor your production models for data quality and model quality. So we integrate with those services to run evaluations.
So we have an integration with Clarify and Model Monitor on model cards then.
Yes, and model cards. Yes, exactly. That is correct. Yeah, and yeah.
And can we add multiple evaluation results, or does it have to be only one?
Can we add multiple evaluation?
Yes.
Yeah, you can add multiple evaluation results. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm going to select monitor model quality and choose a file. Okay. We select a file. So I'm going to select a file that I downloaded earlier, and this is a model quality JSON file from a job that I ran earlier. And then you can specify it's a model quality evaluation job, right? Whatever job name you have used to run, right? So here I'm going to just specify that and then add the model card, right? So this will take a couple seconds for it to process the JSON file and create this. So here you can see it actually created, took the JSON file and then parsed it and provided a nice interface for you to look at those results and add notes to each of those as well if you choose to. Like accuracy metric is 0.5, AUC metrics is 1, F1 scores, and so on. And you can remove it if it doesn't make sense, right? So also you can add your own custom metrics as well. And you can add this evaluation observations. You can put in some observations here, and then if you have a data set for the S3 URI that you can specify here, right? And you can actually add more metrics and add more evaluation results as well, like we spoke about earlier. Let's say you've done Clarify, bias report, right? So you can come in and do the same process we talked about here. You can add another evaluation process. Upload another JSON file, then go through that add model card process. So once you've done this, you can click next. And here you can specify any ethical considerations you have taken into account as part of building the model, because this is from a responsible model card also helps you with your building your model responsibly, right? So it's one of those tools that you can use to ensure you're building your models responsibly. And ethical consideration is a big part of that, right? So here you can say, since we are dealing with customer churn model, I could say that, you don't want to be sending this. The goal of this particular model is to identify churning customers and then send some marketing promotions so we can retain those customers, right? So, but you don't want to be sending marketing promotions and spamming customers if they didn't consent for it, right? If I could say, as a customer, I don't want to be receiving any marketing emails from you. So if they've if they've chosen to not give consent, you can't be sending. That's an ethical thing. So you want to be mentioning that kind of a requirement as well as part of your model card. So, and then any caveats and recommendations that model owners should be aware of and the model consumers need to be aware of, right? So you want to be
this is mainly for model owners or business stakeholders.
Business stakeholders, exactly. So when they start using it, they need to be aware of what is the use case. Am I using it for the right purpose that this model is built for, right? If you don't document that, there is no way for them to know it. And that's where model card plays a critical role as well. And it's also for governance, right? So when governance comes in and evaluates your model, predictions and making sure you're not creating any, negative impacts. So this becomes a good tool for governance as well.
Yes.
All right. So then you can also add custom fields if you choose to have enter other information that is not in the standard wizard. You could have you can add like what is my line of business that's creating this model card. You could potentially say that, like retail business is creating this model card, right? So you could do that,
Yep.
and then click submit, and that's essentially how you create the model card, right? So all of these can be done through API as well, and Python SDK, right? So
Yes.
here we have shown you for demo purposes using this wizard. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's also important, right? It doesn't have to be only UI. We can also do
exactly,
this
exactly.
programmatically.
So yeah, programmatically, so you could
Yes.
do it as you're going through your model building lifecycle. So
Yes. I think that looks great, Ram. People may have one question, and I think I have the same question as well. So it's model card versus model registry. So what are the differences between these two? When should we use model card? When should we use model registry?
yeah, that's a good question. We hear that from customers too. So think of model registry as when you register a model today in a model registry, that kicks off your deployment process, right? So you've done your, in this case, customer churn model. I have built the model. What do I want to do next? Probably I want to move it to a integration environment, testing environment, to integration test, and then go
Yes.
to production, right? So really model registry controls that and provides the inventory of models that are going through that process, right? So it helps you with approval process, and then this promotion process we talked about. Model card, think of that, it is a document, right? It gets attached to that model. And it starts much earlier in the life cycle, like we spoke about. Model registry model starts only after you trained your model and gone through some unit testing processes, right? So, and validated that model is good enough to go to the next stage in your machine learning life cycle, such as integration testing or
Yes.
production, depending on how you set up your machine learning life cycle.
Yes.
Yeah,
Makes
so
sense.
that's a critical difference, right? So it's a document that's created early in the machine learning model lifecycle and is attached to the model and goes forward with the journey all through, and it lives through and through, right? So you may not even use the model in production. You might have retired the model. You may still want to keep the model card because that's an audit and governance function as well. So
Yes. Thank you, Ram. I think it's clear.
okay.
And what
All
are the
right.
other capabilities, Ram, that we have? I think I am seeing some other functionalities like export, edit, clone.
Exactly. So now we created the model. How will you share it, right? So that's you want to be for your risk officers, for example, or your business stakeholders, who doesn't want to come in and look at this UI, right? Or they don't want to use the APIs. Business stakeholders may not even know how to do that. So how do you share this with them? So you could actually export it as a PDF and share it
Okay,
with them, right? So that they can look at it
that's great.
as a PDF. So that you just click on export PDF, it generates that content in a PDF. You specify an S3 location, and then you can generate that PDF. So I do have an example of that. If I want to pull that up, I may not be able to show it here, but it generates a PDF which has the exact content. So
Yes, that's great.
yeah.
Yep. I think that's Ram. It looks super helpful, by the way, for documenting model information and sharing it with other ML practitioners in any of the machine learning lifecycle. And I think the risk officers and audit managers will be super happy also for this product, model cards. And it's
Sure.
it's going to be like single source of truth for modeling, for documentation, basically. I guess, Ram, after we are done with this one, maybe we can move to our third product, demo for our third product, which is model dashboard. What do you think?
Yes. If you don't have any more questions on model card, we can move to that. I can
Yes.
demonstrate how model card works. Before we get there, should we tell our customers what is the purpose of model dashboard? Why did we even build it?
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind it, and how would customers use it? So,
Sure. Sure. Model dashboard is also part of another governance tool we built and launched at reInvent. It's going to be on the left pane under governance field link. So it's basically once the models are deployed, Amazon SageMaker model dashboard gives you the bird's eye view, unified view across all your models, their lineage and performance history. So the dashboard automatically alerts you as well when models are not being monitored or deviate, as you show, Ram, from the expected behavior. And customers can also drill deeper into individual models to troubleshoot those issues. It's a bird's eye view, as I mentioned, of all your models and ability to drill down into details as needed. And these details can include model lineage, performance history, or model documentation. And as you will see, there will be also integration and link to model cards, model details, and endpoints, and monitoring history on this one.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, so now let me double click on what Ozan just talked about, right? So here you can see a list of models presented to you on this dashboard, along with risk rating, which we spoke about during model card. Actually, this model dashboard integrates with model card to pull all that information, like risk rating, and it integrates with your model hosted models, right? So it knows which models you have deployed, so it pulls that information from that account. And also it looks at different dimensions, performance dimensions, such as what is the health of your model from a data perspective, data quality perspective? What is the health of your model from a model quality perspective, such as accuracy metrics, right? So, and from a bias and explainability perspective as well, right? So, how is your model performing in a production environment? Does it have any bias creeping in as part of as it's running predictions in production setting, right? So, or the features that you originally used to build the model drifting away from the original distribution of that, right? So, so we provide feature attribution drift as a performance metric as well. And so that's kind of what you see here. So let me double click on customer churn model to walk you through the process. Do you have any questions, Ozan, here?
Yeah, just one question. These are all models that I have, right?
Exactly. All models in that environment, in that particular, let's assume this is in a production environment that you've deployed all your models, and it is in that particular account where you've deployed. We pull all the models from that you're hosted. This needs to be hosted on SageMaker. The way dashboard works, the model is hosted on SageMaker endpoints, inference endpoints. Then it pulls all that information from there.
Okay. Yep. Clear. Thank you, Ram.
Okay. The other thing I want to mention is it also integrates with SageMaker Clarify and SageMaker Model Monitor. And that's what you're seeing here, which we spoke about during Model Card too. So you have to set up those. I'll double click on that right now, so in a second. So let's double click on customer churn model. You can see that there is a model card, which we spoke about earlier. It integrates with that. You can actually click on it. It takes you right to the model card that we created earlier. And you can look at the model overview, the business details, intended users, all that information we captured earlier, right? So it's a single pane of glass. So think of model card as a single pane of glass for all your models to provide you the health of the models as well as the business and technical information, metadata about your models, right? So that you can keep tabs on them. So,
and there's even link to model card, right? So I can, if I want to edit my model card, I can do this. I can start the process even from here.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you can also, more importantly, this is a common customer ask. As I'm building a model, how do I know what the lineage is? What kind of data set have you used to train the model, right? So we built this view lineage. It gives you a nice DAG. Wow. You can see here, I use this particular data set, right? You can click on it. You can actually know which S3 data set. It points you to that URI of the training data set, right? And when was it created and so on. And then you can actually, what image did you use, right, to build the training? You can see this. I use this particular container XGBoost image. And this is my training. What training job did I run to build this model, right? You can see this is my training job. I'm training job on, and where is my model, right? So you can actually get all that information from this lineage screen, right? So where is my tar file located, right? When was it created, and things like that.
Yeah, that's also very helpful, by the way, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and then you can also look at further details like, what's my model? What does it have, right? So you can click on the customer churn model and look at the model information such as container information, network information, if you're running it on within a network boundary, and any tags associated to it, right? So you can do that there. And then you can also do, once you've here, what we see next is the endpoints, right? We talked about model, customer churn model. The model can be deployed to multiple endpoints, right? You could deploy it to one endpoint, 10 endpoints, depending on your use case. So here I've deployed it to one endpoint, and then we list all the endpoints that model is deployed to. And then to that endpoint is where you're attaching all these monitoring schedules we talked about, right? So like SageMaker Clarify, bias and model bias and model explainability, you have to monitor for that, right? So as you're running through the production traffic and processing it. And same thing with model monitor, data quality, and model quality. So those are the types you see here.
So Ram, basically we can see model cards, models, endpoint details, and monitoring schedules just within one place, which is
Exactly.
model dashboard. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you can see the status of the schedule as well. So you currently set this up using SageMaker Model Monitor APIs and Clarify APIs to do this setup. Here we provide you an easy way to look at the monitoring status, the schedule status, as well as the alerts, right? So other functionality we built here is the alert component, where you can actually configure the alerts. So an example of that could be, let's take model quality, right? So the model
Mhm,
quality has been running, you can see it's alerting 2 out of every 5 monitoring execution fails. What does that mean? So
mhm.
the schedule, maybe you scheduled it to run hourly, right, to monitor this performance metrics, such as, let's say it's an F1 score, but maybe it's violating your F1 score, on every run or every schedule run. But you want to be notified if it fails, maybe out of the 5 runs, 3 or 2 runs, it continuously or fails for those evaluation period, then you want to be alerted, right? So you could set up some kind of a threshold on the alert as well.
Yes.
So there,
So
yeah,
sorry, Ram, I interrupted. I am saying 4 different type of monitor types. So what are the differences among them?
yeah. Model quality is basically to monitor the accuracy of your model, right? Is your
Mhm.
accuracy drifting? Let's say it's an F1 score that you're drifting. Let's say if your F1 score needs to be 0.8, and if it's going below 0.8, you want to be notified, right?
Yes.
So that you can take action on that. It could be potentially, uh, you know, um, data set is biased, or it could be a model concept bias, right? It's a concept drift. So you may have to retrain your model depending on those conditions, right? So that's something you need to evaluate and then retrain your model. You could automate that as well, using CloudWatch alert, and then you can retrain your model. So data quality is the data may be drifting, right? So when you originally trained your model with a particular set of features, now those features may be drifting, right? Or the quality maybe of the data isn't the same thing as what you trained with, right? So it may be you fed in an integer, here it's changing into a text or something like that. So there may be data quality issues that you need to monitor and take
Okay.
action. And the model bias and model explainability are really part of the SageMaker Clarify. And
Mhm.
is the model bias is detecting that concept drift we talked about, right? So is it drifting away from your an example of that could be like a disparate impact, right? Your subpopulations in your features could be changing, right? So, and you need to be able to look for a bias in your model itself, right? So that's model bias. And model explainability, how are your features contributing to the model predictions, right? So you might have trained it in one way, but now the features are coming in differently, right? So over time, so are the features contributing differently? So it's biased toward a particular feature, maybe a gender, right? So you need to uh, handle that as well, right, as part of your
Yes.
process.
Yes.
All right. So now, so just to show you the alert functionality, you can actually click on the model quality and then um, dive deep into the model schedule history as well. Like you can see here, we show you the alert history. When did this particular model monitoring job went into an alert status the first time around? That's what you see here. And how did it get that to that alert? What was the reason behind it, right? So we provide you a reporting function as well. So you here you set the timeline accordingly, and then uh, you could apply. Let's do this. Sorry, it should be one here. I think I'm not navigating here. 1 second. So let's do that. And then click on that. Okay. Now make sure you have the right time range. That's kind of what I was doing there, so that the window is right for pulling the exception validation violation reports. So this is what you're saying, right? So we have the 3 statuses on the scheduled job runs, right? So one is the completion, successfully completed, no issues. Second one is completed violations, right? So that's what you're seeing right here. That means the monitor job did have some violations. It may be that F1 score we spoke about. It is violating those thresholds, right? Or it could be or the third type of execution status, it's failed. You, for some reason, there's an environment issue or whatever, it could fail, right? So that's kind of the execution status. So here you can see it's completed, but with some violations. So if you want to know what those violations are, click on the view report. And here you get to see, it's less than threshold. Like we talked about F1 score, right? So metric F1 is 0.2 here, but less than the threshold of 0.69, right? So we have set up the threshold during monitoring process. It needs to be at least 0.69, but I'm getting F1 score of 0.20, right? So which is significantly less than my expectation. So that's some deviation from my expectation. So it's alerting based on that, and then you can take appropriate action.
It's very clear and detailed, I think.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's the quick rundown on the model dashboard. So you can also do a couple of other things like, like explainability, a deep dive using Studio interface, right? So if you're looking for more information around like a graphical interface to see, how did my features contribute to this? It's also possible to view that in SageMaker Studio. We provide interfaces there to look at different metrics using graphs, right? So
yes, actually, Ram, that's great. I have one question on the alert side. So let's say there is only one violation out of 5, but I set the threshold as 3. So 3 out of 5. So does that mean that I will not get alerted when it's only one violation?
That is correct. Yeah, that is the intent of how we designed it.
Yes.
So we have heard from customers that they don't want to be alerted for every single violation, right? So for every single run.
Yes.
So they may want to set up a threshold on the alert notification. So hey, alert me only when 3 out of every 5 or runs it's violated the expectations, right? So
yes. So this makes a lot of sense. I mean, as you said, I don't want to see the alarms like every second, every hour. But if I still want to see the details of violations, I can go and check the execution history, right? And I can see there if I want to.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So then one more question, Ram. How can I create these monitoring schedules? Is it created programmatically or via the UI?
Programmatically for now.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are looking for customer feedback to improve that experience as well.
Okay.
Right now, it's through APIs from Model Monitors and SageMaker Clarify. You set up using those APIs. You can use SageMaker pipelines as well. We will be providing more guidance to customers there as well through blog posts and things like that. You can essentially create a SageMaker pipeline to set up this as you are deploying your models to production. You also have to create the model monitor schedules, right? So you should be part of your deployment pipeline. So you can potentially look at using SageMaker pipeline for that. We will provide more guidance around that as well. So
yes, I think, Ram, thank you so much for this. I think this is a great demo, and it was very helpful, I believe. And I believe folks watching us also enjoyed our session and enjoyed our newly launched features. And we are always happy to answer, your questions and hear your feedback, guys. And hope to see you in the next SageMaker Friday session.
Yes, thank you, Ozan, and thank you, everyone, for watching. We enjoyed presenting this for you guys. And as Ozan said, if you have questions, we'll be available to answer those questions. Thank you.